I want to say good evening to you this evening.
Good evening.
Once again, it's an honor to be in the house of the Lord tonight. As I'm winding this up, give me just a second. Sister Vicky, I have known her as long as I have known life. The church that I grew up in, Brother Leston, the church I was a member of until I took pastor a few months ago. I've always remembered her and Granny singing at the piano. The song, I'm going to show you how God works, Corey. Sister Vicky said that those milestones will be gone when she leaves. The milestones may be gone, but the memories that she left will always remain.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
I heard a gentleman say one time that when you go to a cemetery and you look, this may just be a testimony night, I don't know. The gentleman said when you go to the cemetery, you look and he said, you'll see a born date and you'll see a death date. Brother Ernie, that date that you was born on does not matter.
Come on.
The date that you see that you died on does not matter. But it's that dash in between that matters. It's what you've done with your life that leaves an impression on people. Brother Leston, what time I've known you and your family, you've left an impression on me.
Bless your heart, son.
Sister Vicky, you've left an impression on me. And as you was talking about that legacy or about that milestones, and I begin to think about the impression that you left on me. Now see, I've got a song in my mind that I remember my grandmother, I can hear her to this day singing. But I also know of a song that I remember, that I'll always remember her voice singing. And as I was sitting there thinking, I thought I was going to have her sing it when I got up, but it was the song that boy sung. Show you how God works. When God is in the midst of it, everything works out right. That's the song that I've always, and I can hear Sister Vicky singing at Genoa, was victory in Jesus. I know by that dash that she's left between that date that she was born, and she's still not to that end date yet, you're still here, but that dash in the middle, you've left a lasting impression on me that she has victory in Jesus. You talked about the battle and the trials that you and Willie have had in your life. It's no different than anybody else in here. I'm sure as a married couple, we all have battles in our lives. We have adjustments that we have to go through. We have learning. I don't care, Corey, how long you date somebody. You really don't know that person until you marry them and you begin to live with them. Then you begin, and it's a learning. I've been married for 22 years, and I praise God for my wife, but we're still learning each other. And I believe until the day we die, we're going to continue to learn each other. And you know, our walk in Christian life is no different, Brother Leston. There are things that I've done as a young Christian, Ernie, that I didn't know any better, that I thought was right. But David said, and I'll show you how important it is. He wrote it down twice in God's book, in Proverbs. There's a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. That scripture is written down twice in the book of Proverbs. It must be pretty important for it to have been written down twice. Corey, as we learn, there are things that I thought was right in my life as a Christian that I'd done until I turned around and God showed me that those were wrong. And why is that? It's a learning process and a growing process until the day that we die. And I have no intentions of preaching on this, but the Bible will tell you in the book of Jeremiah, and we may I wanted to preach out of 1 Kings tonight, but time is limited for that because that was a pretty long sermon. Might have to come back another night and do that, who knows. But out of the book of Jeremiah, you read where God had told Jeremiah, Sister Vicky, he said, I want you to go down to the potter's house. And he said, I want you to watch what he does on that wheel. And he said, I want you to stay there until I see your word, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to have you to do. And the Bible said that Jeremiah had went down to the potter's house there and said that he watched the work that the potter had brought upon the wheel. And he said he seen that the clay was marred in the potter's hand. It was marred. It was not perfect, Sister Vicky. It was marred. It was impure. It was imperfect. It had spots. It had blemishes. It had cracks. I'm going to tell you, I don't care how close you walk to God, friend, you've got blemishes. blemishes. You've got cracks. You've got impurities. Why is that? Because we're flesh. Because we're human. Because we're made of the world. And God is not a God of this world. And He said we got to be in the world, but when we become a Christian, He said, come ye out from among the world and be ye separate. Now, Brother Corey, I can come out from among the world, but I've still got to be in the world. And you see that this flesh came from the dust of the earth. And He said He saw the work that the potter had wrought upon the wheel and how that the clay was marred in the potter's hand. But I thank God that the potter, when he found the clay marred in his hand, didn't throw it off to the side and grab another piece. But what he done, Sister Vicky, is I praise God that when he saw me and I was marred in the hand of the potter, that he didn't just throw me away, Sister Vicky. Even as little as a week ago, maybe, or a month ago, I messed up. Maybe I don't know where you're at in your walk of life with God, but maybe today somewhere you messed up. I want you to know something, that God won't throw you away and dispose of you because I've got something wrong going on in your life. But praise God when you go back to the potter and you allow Him to make that rod upon the wheel again. He said He found the clay that was marred in the hand of the potter, and He said it seemed good to the potter to make it a new vessel. And that had to have been an old vessel first, brother, in order for it to be made a new vessel again. God does not take the clay that is marred. Any of us ever grew up poor here and you had to play in the mud holes as a kid? Anybody ever made mud piles as a kid growing up? When you sat down, I remember sitting down in the gravel driveway and down in the mud hole there. Mom let me go listen. She got us out of bed right at daylight, kicked us out of the house during the summertime. We didn't lay around inside the house. We stayed out until lunchtime. She called us to come back. Then we was out again till dark. We didn't lay around, didn't have video games, Corey. Didn't have iPhones or iPads. We had 3, 8, and 11, and maybe 13 if the sky was clear, because we lived up on the hill. But I remember out in the mud hole playing, and I'll get to Scripture here in a minute. But I gotta testify about how God shows me things. And I remember playing in the mud holes, and I remember making them mud pies. The more I began to beat upon it, the more I was able to form it, Sister Vicky. Sometimes God's got to put pressure on our lives to be able to mold us into what He would have us to. I wouldn't want to preach on the potter, but I guess I might as well. We may come back another night and preach on Elijah. But right now I got to preach on the potter. Listen, the potter has to put pressure upon that clay in order to mold it into what He would have it to be. As I sit in that mud hole, I'm making them mud pies really. Pretty soon it begins to dry out. You'll see a crack that forms. You know why there's a crack, Sister Vicky? If you break it open, there's an impurity somewhere within that. And you know what I done? I didn't throw it away. I pulled the stick out. I pulled the rock out. I dipped it back down in the water again. And it was glory. I'm glad at God. I got impurity. Glory to God. It puts me on the potter's wheel. He gets those impurities out of my life. And He puts me back. Sometimes it takes a little bit of water, Brother Ernie. And I'm talking about the living water, if you will, that flows from the throne of God. Oh, let me expound something to you. You know how they get the clay, Sister Vicky? There's a place that's called the potter's field. And you know what the potter's field was? The useless vessels. When the potter had a vessel that was no good, that's where he disposed of it. Oh, that's a long sermon about how Jesus bought that potter's field for 30 pieces of silver. When they thought the priest did, that they purchased that field. Jesus purchased the potter's field, that place where the useless vessels was no good. He found favor in the vessel that he found in the field. I gotta get this. they begin to take that clay, they would, and here's the process now. I'm good, but I really just kind of, I gotta find how they do everything. When I read about potters, I gotta find how they make the clay. When I read about being grafted in, that's another sermon. I gotta read about how it's done. When I read about all of these things, about how I preach to you about being pitched, I would think, I can't just take that word. I gotta know what it means. So I sit down, Brother Ernie, and I begin to look how the potters make clay. Now, glory. I had no intention of going this way, but God, that's what you want. So we've got to do it. The potter would go and he'd gather clay up and he'd sift it to where he got the impurities out of it. The big ones, anyway. You know what sifting is? My daddy trapped through the winter time because we was poor. That's how he made his living. And he would get dirt, and it had big clumps. It had rocks in it, Sister Viggy. He had a piece of mesh that he would gather that dirt upon, and he'd begin to rub it across that mesh. It would break it down, Brother Ernie, into smaller pieces. That way it become finer. It was able to be molded and to be used after it was broke down. Sometimes God's got to break us down before He can use us when He wants us to be used. We got to realize tonight, if you're under pressure, if you got something going on in your life, maybe God is adding a little pressure on you to break you down because He's getting you ready for something big that's getting ready to happen. I'm that part of Sister Vicky. I get that clay. When he would get it sifted, he would begin to add a little bit of living water to it. In my life, he did. That before you can mold it, it's just us. I would praise God when you add the water to it. It becomes moldable into something that you can use. I don't care how good of a man you are. Without the water of God in your life, you are unusable for God.
Amen. That's the truth.
The potter would take
That's
that
the truth.
and he would add that water to it, Brother Ernie. And he'd begin to mold it into what he would have it to be. And I'm going to tell you, it's not a short process. This walk of life that we have right now as a child of God is not a short process. I will never be completed until the day that I die. I will continually be molded in the eyes of God. Why? Because I'm ever changing. I'm growing closer to God. As I grow closer, Brother Zach, God gives me more jobs to do. I just started out as a young minister. I maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, that's good. But as you get older in the Word, He'll give you 15 or 20. And if you like me, got a big mouth, He'll give you 45 or an hour. Or you'll take an hour and a half, whatever it needs. But as you gain these things in your life, God will put more to you. He'll add to you, Brother Ernie. Much is given where it is, much is required. So if God's giving you a talent for you to sing and to preach, you better sing, brother, and you better preach. If God's giving you the boy of glory, if He's giving you the job, to be a pastor and sing and preach, you better pastor, you better sing and preach. Where much is given, much is required. But there's some needing. You women know what it takes to need, right? You know what I'm talking about? When you begin to make that dough, right? Yeah, you got to put pressure on it, don't you? That it may join together. I want to tell you, God will put pressure in our lives. And in the beginning, it'll hurt. It'll be contrary. You'll fight with it. But when you begin to realize that it's God doing it, I praise God you mold me into what you would have me to be. Use me where you see me fit to be used. And I will follow where He leadeth. I may not be what the world wants, but I'm not worried about what the world wants. I'm worried about what God wants. Now let's get back to the potter. They say, if you read about how they make the wheels, or how they make the vessels that they make, once they add the water to it, Ernie, then they can begin to mold it into what they would have it to be. They mold it, they get a generalized idea, get a generalized shape of what they want. And then there's a drying process. It takes a little time. When God adds to you, Ernie. Sometimes, let me just give you some scripture to back it up. The psalmist said in one, I said, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of the sinner, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate both day and night. You'll get to now, don't you? For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water, that shall bring forth his fruit in his season. When God begins to mold us, sometimes he'll set us over here for a little while, because we got to get dried out just a little bit, not from the Spirit, but what happens when clay begins to dry? It gets hard, it gets tough. If he threw you out there when you was still wet and malleable, Satan will get a hold of you, and he'll mold you into what he wants you to be. But if Jesus sets you up in a church somewhere, to be the deacon or the assistant pastor, but you know that somewhere down the line you're desiring to work a little higher than that. That's good. That's good that you desire a good work. But it's got to come in God's time when you're ready. Sometimes He may set you up somewhere that you might dry out just a little bit, that you might become a little tougher. Now you're still malleable, you're still moldable, because here's what happens, Leston. When they set them up and the vessel, and they get a generalized shape of what they want it to be, then they begin to add to it. Maybe a handle, maybe a spout. Oh, as you get these gifts, Brother Isaac, that you use for God, the more you use them, the more God will add to you. Maybe that little bit. Corey, you remember when you used to sing? He come with us and begin to sing. I'm going to tell on him. I know he don't care. He couldn't keep time very well. He couldn't sing in tune very well. Out of key a little bit. But you look at him now. He plays as well in tune as anybody that I know. I sing in tune as well as anybody that I ever know. There's time that it takes in our lives. It's not an overnight thing. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to come up short from time to time. This is a growing process until the day that the Lord returns or you die. One or the other. Now, when you get a little bit tougher, Ernie, he'll begin, the master will, or the potter, I will begin to put his inscription upon that. Well, glory. Paul said that they would know me by the marks that I bear in the Lord. They knew Paul because the marks, not the outward marks, but the way he lived his life showed that he was a child of God. You said you knew that man was not a man of God, but I promise you he knew that you were by the way you held yourself, by the way you spoke, by the way you talked, by the way you presented yourself. If you stand in amongst the men that are lost and undone, and they can't tell you apart from them, there's something wrong. I don't have to tell people I'm a Christian. They see it in me. They hear it in me. They see by the way that I talk. They see by the way that I walk. Friend, if you can stand amongst them and you don't look any different, you don't sound any different, you don't act any different. You've heard the old saying, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Well, friend, if you act like a sinner, you walk like a sinner, you talk like a sinner, then guess what? You are a sinner. I talked about that mallet or over there in Revelation. One of these boys did, might have been Ernie. In the 3rd chapter, you begin to read about how he said there, Revelator John, I want you to write unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans concerning this thing. That I know thou work. He said, I would that thou were cold or hot, but because thou art lukewarm, neither cold nor hot, he said, I will spew thee out of my mouth. You've heard the old saying, that Christian that's straddling the fence, I want you to know that Satan owns the fence that you're straddling. If you're straddling the fence, Satan already has you where he wants you.
That is the truth. That's the truth. Good preaching.
Archaeologists will tell you.
Good preaching.
See, the longer I preach, the clearer my voice gets.
Bless your heart.
Archaeologists will tell you, Brother Ernie, that they don't have to have a signature on that piece of clay that they find to know who had put it, know who had made it. They said they can tell by the marks that's on it who it was that had built that pottery. The world ought to be able to look at you by the marks that you have and know that you are
that is
the pottery.
good, my brother.
As they they set it off and they let it dry just a little bit so it becomes tougher, so it can withstand a little more pressure, Brother Leston. Then the potter will begin to put his signature drawings on it. Oh, when you get a little tough sometimes, you see, when we're new Christians, when we're babes in Christ, you know what happens? We get offended real easy. When somebody comes along and corrects you because you misquoted a scripture, it stings. I don't like to be corrected, but the older that I get, the tougher I get. And the more I realize that I need to be corrected. Listen to this. When he gets a little bit tougher, then he can put his marks upon it. And then he can begin to do the final molding into what he would have it to be. And that's not all there is to it, Brother Leston. Do you know that the most expensive pottery that you'll find in those days, the ones that's worth the most, are the ones that are colored? And you know what color most of them were? They were red. You know how they got the red color? By the blood of a lamb. They slaughtered a lamb. They then soaked that clay in the lamb's blood that it may turn red inside and out. Not just a painting on it. Boy, remember how I brought up this without? And you can look on the inside of that clay, and it's as red as it is on the outside. It was that. It was red on the inside. And my friend, you've been washed by the blood of the Lamb. Not only on the outside, but on the inside also. They would take that clay, they would take that lamb's blood, they would soak that clay in it, and then they would put it in mold. And you know what happens when they got the final mold to it? Then they stick it in the flame. Then they put it in a kiln. Then they put it in a hot flame. Now most of it was 1,500 to 1,700 degrees. But you know what the archaeologists will tell you? By looking and by searching and by history, the best, most expensive and cleanest and purest pots that was ever found had been put through the hottest flames for the longest time. Friend, my Bible tells me that gold is out of the fire's fire. Praise God. Sometimes He puts us through the heat. The three Hebrew children, Mishael, Azrael, and Hananiah, they call them Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. They were put into a fiery furnace one time. But guess what? They were not alone. I quoted to you out of Revelation tonight. When John said, they saw Him. He said, I turned to see the voice of Him that spoke to me, and said He was girded about with a golden girdle around His pants. He was clothed with a white robe. Said His hair was white as wool and white as snow. He said the flames of fire is what His eyes looked at. He said He had the 7 crowns in His hand. Then He said His feet was as fine brass that had been burnt in a fire. And I often think, Sister Vicky, I remember reading when Jesus was in the furnace with the Hebrew children, how they had been heated up 7 times hotter than it had ever gone. Just maybe, praise God, He's walking the words of the Prince of His feet that had been burnt in a fire.
Glory to God. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord.
Said the most expensive
Praise God.
and the best quality, the only ones you would find in king's palaces, the only ones
Thank you, brother.
was the ones that had been through the hottest flame,
Yes.
the ones that had been in the furnace the longest, and the one that had the lamb's blood on it. I'm going to tell you, the only people you're going to find in the king's palace is those that's been through the furnace of affliction.
Yes, sir.
Those that's got the lamb's blood in their heart. And those that's been molded by the master of all masters. And by the potter of all potters. The king of all kings. When Paul, or when John the Revelator saw him there, he said, I fell at his feet as dead. And he said he felt the hand of God. I believe Jesus reached out with his right hand and touched him and said, John, it is I, be not afraid. I am he that was dead. And alive is now alive forever.
Glory to God. Praise the Lord.
Over death and over hell.
Praise God. Hallelujah. Children, that's the gospel. Hallelujah. That's the word of God.
Let me show you something.
Thank you, Lord.
I got a little notebook I carry around with me. Here's the notes from Monday night. I didn't preach one of them. Here's the notes from Wednesday night. I didn't preach one of them. And here's the notes from tonight. I never preached one of them.
Bless your heart.
When you obey the leadership of God,
Come on. Amen.
you're going to be tossed and put in directions that you wouldn't normally go.
That's right.
If Travis always preached what Travis had written down, it wouldn't be a God, it'd be a Travis. Travis can't save you.
That's good, son.
Travis can't bring you out of the fire. Travis can't put you through the furnace of affliction or anything. But I praise God when I get behind that altar, I've got something. Be instant in season and out of season. There's been times before I've been out of season that I've had to preach on what I've known, and the Spirit hadn't always been there with me. And it wasn't the Spirit's fault, it was my fault. But you see, when we follow the leadership of God, it'll always come out right.
Amen.
You can ask my wife, and I'm just going to tell on myself, every time I preach, I'm on the way home, and I'll say, I left that out. I left that out. I should have said this. She said, stop. She said, you said exactly what God told you to say.
Amen.
If God wanted you to have said that, He would have given that to you while you was there. I said, yeah, but it sounds so. She said, stop. God put it in your heart, and it's perfect what God gives. And that's all that we can do. I want you to understand tonight, we all have got trials and tribulations. We're all going through rough spots. At times, we all have impurities in our life. I'm going to tell this story real quick and then I'll quit. I don't know where I work, and they're shut down now, but I was over an area called, it was a furnace area. By no coincidence. There's a pot underneath that furnace. It's about 15 foot wide, 10 foot long, and about 12 foot deep of molten zinc, Sister Vicki. Molten zinc. And what that done, that strip would run through that, and it would coat that strip with zinc. Your vehicles that you're driving has been ran through that coating line where I worked at one time or another from AK Steel. Most of the vehicles around here come from our steel. And I know they don't do very good because they're all rusted, but that is the coating that we put on. Seems like they've gotten worse, whatever that may be. But listen to this. I was sitting out there one day, and you've got to wear this great big silver suit that keeps you from getting burned. Every 2 hours, these men would come out with these big spoons, Brother Ernie, or Brother Lester, sorry. And when you would look out, they would be, it looked like, I don't know, I can't hardly, it was grime floating on the top of that. Then men would go out there with them ladle spoons, and they would drag that off. You know what that was? That was impurities. That was dross, they call it. That was impurities that was on that. And if that stayed on there, let me show you what happened. They would clump together, and then they would sink down to the bottom. Then you'd have to shut the line down, you'd have to pump it out, because that material would get rejected because it would be on that material. And I never thought nothing about that till one day I was standing out there, and God said, Travis, and yes, God speaks to me all the time. I talk to God. I'm going to say you don't believe that if you want. I've had Him speak to me, and I'm going to go ahead and tell on myself on 2 occasions. I will go to my grave telling you that I heard an audible voice from God. It don't always happen, but 2 times in my life that I've had that happen. And it was a confirmation, God telling me. One is my mom was going to live, and one is my dad was going to die. Because I was praying to God saying, God, I want you to save my dad. And God said, no. I heard no. And I was by myself driving down the road. And I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't bring my dad back for nothing, because he's a good God-fearing man, and I know where he's at right now. And I know that my mom's time was not yet. And I'm going to tell you, I'll go to my grave believing that. But we was talking, I was going to work one morning, and as I got there under that pot, God said, Travis, He said, you see that pot? I said, yeah, Lord, I see that pot. He said, that's just like your life. I said, what do you mean just like my life? He said, you see them impurities floating around, that dross floating around on it? That's the sin that gets in your life. He said, if you don't get it out, every time it starts to form on you, it's going to sink down on the inside, and then your material will be rejected. And I said, Lord, what do you mean? He said, I'm telling you that sin is dross. It is nasty impurities that happen in our life. I don't care how close you walk to God, Brother Leston. If you're an honest man, you'll tell me that you sin from time to time, that you fall short of God from time to time. Sister Vicki been on this way a lot of times. I had a brother tell me the other night, we were sitting there talking, I said, you know what? He said, I need you to pray for me, son. He said, there's things that God tells me to do that I don't do. I said, well, I want to tell you something. As for me, in the way that I see it, a lot of people think that doing the wrong thing for God is sinful. I'm going to tell you, doing nothing at all for God is just as simple as doing the wrong thing. If God is telling you to do something and you do not do it, that is against what God wants you to do. And what I read, if I do something that's contrary to what God is wanting me to do, that is sin. I don't know how else to look at it, but I want you to understand we all
all sin from time to time. We all mess up. We all come short. But here's what you've got to do. You've got to put that silver suit on.
Yeah.
And you've got to wait out there in the heat sometimes, and you've got to take God's spoon, and you've got to clean that sin off. Because I'll promise you, if you allow it, let me show you something. You ever tell a little lie?
Let's see, Paul.
You ever had to tell a lie to cover up a lie? Huh? Come on now. Have you ever had to tell another lie to cover up the lie that you told to cover up another lie? Listen to this. Have you ever told a lie so much that you forgot whether it was the truth or not? You don't know if it was a lie or not? Now come on. I'm going to tell you something. You leave those things in you long enough, and they no longer are on the surface. They're down on the inside. And then we're going to have a little harder time to get it out. But guess what? I've got the potter.
Amen.
I've got the potter that when I can't just get it out on my own and make the wrong things I've done right. You know, if I've wronged you, Brother Ernie, it's my duty to go to you and to tell you that I've wronged you and apologize to you. You said you don't like talking to people? Try going to people and apologizing for something. You're talking about having to lay your pride down. It's hard to do. And a lot of times, pride is what keeps people from coming to God. The Bible says that pride goes what? Before a fall. And you say, great is that fall. You see, we got to understand that pride is a hard thing to swallow sometimes. And when you've done somebody wrong, when somebody's done you wrong, you want them to come to you. I want to hear them apologize to me, right? What makes you think you're any better? When you've done somebody wrong, God expects you to go to... Listen, you can fall down here on this. I don't mean to get on all this. I don't know why. But you can fall down here and apologize to God all you want. You didn't do it to God. You done it to that gentleman out there. You want to make things right? Go to that man and apologize to him. Then go to God and tell him you're sorry. How that you've done these things. Listen, it's not.
That's the Bible.
People said that I can't be a Christian, it's hard. What's the Bible say about the way of a transgressor?
It's hard.
The way of a transgressor is hard.
Yeah.
The way of a Christian is not hard, Sister B.
No, God makes it hard.
And my burden is light.
Yes, sir.
You see, if you surrender it all to God, I'll not apologize to that man. That's not what a godly man would say.
That's right.
When you give your life to God, you'll know immediately that you wronged somebody. You'll know immediately that you said something you shouldn't say. And you will want to right that wrong in your life. That's the difference. I'm still flesh. Willie, I still mess up. I still sin. I still say things from time to time out of the heat of the anger or out of the moment. I say things and then think, oh, God, I'm sorry, and I have to apologize if I've said something. Hardest thing I ever done in my life was apologize to my boss about 6 weeks ago. It broke my soul to have to do that. And it wasn't that I had necessarily done anything wrong, but I'm going to tell you what I've done. He said something to me to make me mad, and I shunned him. And for 6 weeks, I wouldn't even talk to him. I wouldn't look at him. I stayed away from him. And God kept telling me. God kept saying, Travis, is that what I would do? Would I stay away from that man? Would I stay away from that man because he said something to make me mad, or because I didn't like what he done? Brought me down in a pit. And I even had a brother tell me, said, Travis, he said, you know that's wrong, don't you? I said, yes, I do. I said, but I can't bring myself to do it. And I will tell you what, God made me so sick. I got down so sick that the only way I could get through it, Ernie, was to go to him. And he had no idea what I was talking about. He didn't. The only person it was bothering by shunning him was me. It did not bother him at all because he didn't pay no attention to it. I went to him and said, I need to apologize to you. He said, okay, for what? I said, because I said, you said something the other day that made me mad, and I said, I have shunned you. He said, really? I said, yes. And you know, he never lost not one night of sleep, and I lost all kinds of sleep over that. That's the difference between a godly person that has sinned and a person that has not accepted Christ as a sinner. When you've accepted Christ, He changes you on the inside and on the outside. The things that used to make you angry no longer do. Now, you still get angry. I'm not going to say you won't, but the heart inside will change. And it'll break you down. He said, old things are passed away. I look the same on the outside, but on the inside, I'm changed. I have been changed. And old things are passed away. Behold, all all things are become new. Real quick, and I've got to do this. I know it's late, but I'm going to blame you boys for doing all that, for not getting me. I got to preach my hour whether you get up or not. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to say this real quick. There was a woman one time in the 4th chapter of the book of John. You'll read about the Samaritan woman. Everybody knows the story, right? Can somebody tell me out loud what kind of woman she was? Come on. Was she? How do you know?
Which one are you talking about?
The one that you're talking about.
I'd say she was an adulterer.
Prostitute, that's the general consensus. Because, she had 5 husbands and the one she had. Okay. Jesus came to her in the heat of the day. Do you know why that was?
She was going to be at the well.
At noon, she was there. Do you know when the women went to draw water?
In the morning.
She was there by herself. You want to know why? She was outed. She was outcast, even in Samaria.
Yes, sir.
The Jews hated the Samaritans. And that goes with Elijah. If I was to go back and preach on Elijah, that starts all the way back there with when Elijah was talking to Ahab. It talks about Solomon. It all started with Solomon. I don't have enough time to get through all that. But the Samaritans came about because they mixed and mingled. After they were taken captive, some of them escaped and some of them stayed in Samaria, and they took them captive and took them up outside of Iran, what they call now northern Iran is what they call it now. And I've got to do this because I can't just leave it like that. I can't no longer preach on the Samaritan woman without trying to give her side of the story. All we do is go ahead and just say she was a prostitute. She was a horrible woman. She was an adulterer. Do we have any idea what kind of marriages she had? Do we have any idea that maybe her husband maybe beat on her at first and that's the reason she might have left her first husband? We don't know the details of the story because it doesn't tell us.
Right.
We don't know. We just automatically presume because of the past that she had. Do you know that that's wrong in the eyes of God to go ahead and judge somebody because of their past and what they've done? We don't know what caused that alcoholic to become an alcoholic. He might have been beaten by his dad. That's not justifying alcoholism, but we don't know the story behind the fact. We don't know that the reason that man's laid in a ditch line with a needle in his arm was because his mom was a drug addict when he was born, and he had those tendencies born in him, and he had to have it. We don't know those details. All we know, he's a drug addict. All we know is that man's a drunk. All we know is that woman was a prostitute. We don't know the story. But Jesus, he said, I see needs. I must needs to go through Samaria. The world, the godly world, the Jews had turned them away because of what they had done many, many years ago. And when Jesus said, you know what, they made roads around Samaria so they didn't have to go through Samaria. But Jesus said, I must needs to go through Samaria. There's a reason. And I can imagine the apostles going, wow, Lord, the Samaritans, they serve false gods. They're wicked. They've mixed and mingled. They've got bastard kids. And they're horrible people. I got to go through Samaria. There's something that I need to do. And I'm telling you tonight, I don't care what you've done or where you're at in your life, God seen the need to come through this church tonight to sit down beside you. It doesn't matter what you've done. We don't know the history behind what that woman had done. We know that she was by herself in the hottest part of the day. She was an outcast and a loner. You think she was happy? You think she was happy? She was there all by herself. I couldn't even talk to the women, couldn't even talk to nobody. They kicked her out. But along came a man by the name of Jesus, sitting around the well, waiting on her iron rod. That in the world had already outed me and pronounced me as an awful person. That Jesus seemed good somewhere in my life.
Hallelujah.
And for us to preconceive somebody's life because of their past is wrong. You may not like it. I'm sorry, but it is the Word. I'm just the messenger. That's all I am. Jesus came to that woman and he sat there at the well. And here she come. He said, give me to drink. She knew. Me, a Samaritan, and you, a Jew. In other words, she knew. He didn't have to say he was a Jew. She knew by the way he dressed, by the way he talked. Do people know the way you dress and the way you talk and the way you act that you're a child of God? He didn't have to say anything. And to this time, up to this point, not one time, I wish it was earlier. I really wish it was. Up up to this point had Jesus told nobody but the disciples that he was the Son of God. At this point, no person had been told yet but the disciples. Nobody. They just thought he was some guy that was born down there in Bethlehem, that he was a father of the son of a father that was a woodworker. That's all. A carpenter. And that's all they knew about him. That's all they knew about him. But the disciples knew, right? Because of the things that he had told and expounded to them. This woman, he said, give me to drink. She said, I'm a Samaritan and you're a Jew and you asked me to give you to drink?
Come on. Come on. Bless your hearts.
Watch this. 4th chapter of the book of John. Watch here. Watch here. I know it's late. I know it's late. 4th chapter of the book of John. Listen to this. Jesus, verse 10, answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou would have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. Now, this woman, Ernie, a Samaritan, this woman lived a hard life. She hadn't done the right things. Jesus didn't judge her because of her past. He never once brought her past up to her. She's the one that brought it up. She's the one that started the conversation. He didn't just come down on her. But I can imagine a little bit of animosity in her tone because of him, a Jew, and her, a Samaritan. Because see, these people in this time, they didn't like the Jews either because they weren't accepted by the Jews. That woman didn't have anything to do with what happened back in Solomon's days to Solomon, but yet she couldn't go to the temple and go in the temple and worship God. Though she had lineage in her body. Now whatever it is, you may believe it or may not, she had part God lineage in her. Yes. But yet somewhere along the line it was tainted by somebody that was out of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they had called them, by a lack of better words, they count them as dogs, the Bible said, those people that were not Jews. They were a Gentile. You know what the definition of Gentile is? Anybody that's not a Jew. Because if you were not a Jew, you were an outcast to the commonwealth of Israel. You were a dog counted to them. That woman could not go down if she wanted to and worship in the temple. And they began to have a conversation. And listen to what the conversation says. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou this living water? I can imagine a little sarcasm. Really? Living water? Yeah. Where do you get this living water from? And the Bible said, she said, art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us this well, and drank thereof himself and his children and his cow? Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water, I can quote this, but I want to read it and get it exactly for you. Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. I want to ask you tonight, what kind of water is flowing out of your well this evening? Every one of us has got a well. Zach, is it a well that you drink out of and every day you find yourself there again because you're thirsty again? Let me tell you about a well tonight that you can drink out of that you will never thirst again. The same one that Jesus was expounding unto her right here. Now he goes on to tell her here, she said, the woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come here to draw. She's still thinking with the carnal mind. I don't want to come back to this place again during the heat of the day. Give me this water that I may not ever have to come here and drink. Maybe a little sarcasm again in her voice because of this. And the Bible said that Jesus said unto her, Go call thy husband and come hither. Now he knew exactly her life already, right? He knew exactly. I want you to know, he knows exactly what your life is tonight. You don't have to tell him what you've done wrong. You don't have to tell the pastor what you've done wrong. You don't have to tell anybody in here of the things that you've done throughout your life that was sinful, because God already knows them. Let me add this to this. The Bible talks about Jesus coming down to the pool of Bethesda and said every season an angel would come down and stir the water, right? And he would stir the water and said whoever got up and got into the water first, I would be healed of whatever infirmity they had. Along came Jesus one time, down there by the pool, there was laying there a man that was lame, Brother Lester. And he asked him, he began to ask him, will thou be made whole? That's all he asked him. Read it. That's all Jesus said to him. Instead of saying yes or no, he begins to expound to him why he couldn't get into what Jesus don't need to know. He already knows why he didn't say, well, that's a good excuse. He said, sir, every time I go to get in the water, son, he don't want to know your excuses. He already why you're where you're at. He's just asking you tonight, will thou be made whole?
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
He knows what you've done.
Hallelujah.
He knows your past. Real quick.
Hallelujah.
Church lets out at 9:30, right? I got 10
Thank
more
you,
minutes.
Lord.
Listen to me. The woman answered, verse 17, and said, I have no husband. He said unto her, Thou hast well said, I had no husband. He said, For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, and that thou saidst truly. And that sayest thou truly. The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Now, she begins to argue with him. Our fathers, she begins to say, our fathers worship up here in this mountain. Listen to what he said. Our fathers worship in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Jesus said unto her, Listen, woman, believest me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor at Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship, you know not what, she said. He said, we know what we worship.
Amen.
For salvation is of the Jews. But I want you to hang on to these last 2 verses. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship Him. God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. 2 more verses and then I quit, I promise. And listen to this. And the woman saith unto him, I know that the Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When He has come, He will tell us all things. The first time Jesus ever told anybody other than the 12 who He was. He said, Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am He. And I believe that very instant, Sister Vicky, her eyes were opened.
Amen.
Her ears were opened. She dropped her water pot. She wasn't worried about drawing water no more. The Bible said she ran back into town and said, come see a man.
Yes.
Come see a man that has told me all I have to do.
Hallelujah.
Sure, this is the Christ.
Hallelujah.
As everybody stands, Corey, as you come and get a sign, I want you tonight to come see a man who knows everything that you've done, who knows your past, he knows your present, and here's the best part, he knows your future too. He knows everything. He knows you inside and out. He knows what you've done. You don't have to come and tell us what you've done wrong. God already knows that. When it says confess with the mouth, it doesn't confess to me. You've got to confess to Him.
Amen.
And that doesn't mean He doesn't know. He just wants to hear you confess it and realize that He can take care of it. So that's what I'm telling you tonight. I want you to listen like the woman did at the well. She was not where she needed to be. She had lived maybe an adulterous life. She had 5 husbands. The one she was with was not her own at that time. We don't know what caused her to get in that shape. We don't know if her husbands had left her or whether she had left them. But we went ahead and preconceived that she was either a prostitute or a harlot or some kind of impure woman. Now, we go ahead and do that. That's what the world does. You go ahead and play, Corey. That's what the world does. The world may look at you and say, you know what? He's that. Or she's that right there. And look what she's done. They don't know what's going on in your life. But here's the greatest part. They're not going to be the one to judge you. They're not going to be the one to cast judgment on you because of the things you've done. Jesus said, come unto me all ye that labor. Do you labor tonight? Do you labor and you never find rest? Do you ever struggle in life and yet you never find peace? Do you always sit down to eat but you find yourself always hungry? Do you always drink, honey, but you seem to always find yourself thirsty? Do you try to fill that empty spot in your heart with everything in the world, but yet it can never be filled? That's because you're trying to fill it with the world. You need to fill it with Jesus.
Amen.
He'll set you down at a table that you can eat from that always stays full. He'll let you drink from the same fountain that that woman drank from that day. I believe she drank from it. That she drank from it, she never thirsted again. Because she got living water. She got life eternal in heaven. You see, everyone's going to get life eternal. But it's based on what you do down here, where you spend that eternity. And it is up to you. God is a loving God. God is a kind God. God is a forgiving God. a remorseful God. God will cry with you when you need to cry. God will laugh with you when you need to laugh. God will hold you when you need somebody to hold. God will pick you up when you fall. God will guide your steps when it's dark and you don't know which way to turn. When you come to a crossroad in your life, don't make a move until God says to go, because He'll lead your steps. He'll lead and guide your path. The Bible says the Word of God is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. It says He is a high tower. You know what a high tower is? A place that we can climb upon where we can see out ahead of us when danger's coming. He said, oh, the roof of me said, I have set watchmen up on my towers that they may keep their watch both day and night, and they will never keep their peace. Friend, if you got Jesus, you've got watchmen out ahead of you that'll warn you of the trouble. But friend, if you don't have Him, guess what? You'll find yourself in the middle of those storms and not knowing what to do. I'd be like Paul, like I preached the other night, in the middle of the storm, Vicki. You're still going to have storms, but all He's going to say is, peace be still. All you got to do is say, it is all well with my soul. I don't matter what happens to me, Brother Ernie, because I've got Jesus.
Amen.
Why would you leave here tonight not having the Lord in your life? Can somebody in here raise their hand and tell me they've never had a battle, they've never fought a storm? That's what I thought. Somebody in here ever tell me that they've come to a crossroad and they've made the wrong move? You know why we did that? We didn't wait on the Lord.
Amen.
We didn't have the Lord guiding our steps. Tonight, I ask you, I'm not going to just sit here and harp at you and spit at you and just hack at you. I'm telling you, Jesus loves you.
Amen.
And we love you.
Yes.
The reason I do this is not for me. I don't care if you ever know my name. But I hope you remember that I preached to you what Jesus done for that Samaritan woman. Nobody else would. When nobody else would give her a time of day, Jesus said, I must need Tonight, He said, I must needs to go through the gospel tabernacle because there's somebody that needs me. There's somebody that needs a touch from the Master. There's somebody that needs strength. There's somebody that needs help. There's somebody that's in trouble. There's somebody that needs me to say, peace be still in their life. There's somebody that needs me to touch them and heal them of their infirmity. I'm going to tell you, God can do all that. He can do all that in your life, but you have to ask Him. He'll not force Himself on you. Hell is going to be full of people. Not that God rejected, but full of people that rejected God. That's all there is to it, Sister Lee. People's going to reject God. Why would you? When you know He's standing here saying, come unto me. All you that labor. Listen, lay your pride down. Lay your big feelings down. And let Jesus take a hold of your life. Let Him show you what you've been missing your entire life. Would you come? Would you come and let Jesus make a change in your life? Let me make this offer to you. If you come and try and you don't like it, what have you missed? But if you don't come and you don't try, what have you missed? The choice is yours tonight. The choice is totally and 100% up to you. I'd love to pray with you. I'd love to see you saved. I'd love to be able to go home and tell my family that I saw one die out to Jesus tonight. Not by anything that I've done. I'd love to go home and say I felt the power of God and someone got touched tonight. I already felt that. There's already been one. But I'd like to say there's another.
Yes.
I'd like to see another.
Hallelujah.
One more offer from me. Would you come? That's it. Nothing big. It's nothing hard. If you want, come back and walk with me. If you want, we'll come back here and we'll do it back here. This is just a place that man builds for people to come to. Wherever you call out upon God, He'll be there for you.
Yes.
Do you want me to come to you tonight? Do you want me to come to you tonight? Just raise your hand. Just raise your hand. I'll come back here. We'll kneel down right there on the floor and we'll pray to God and we'll make things right. Would you do that? Try it. Try it. Try it now. I'll give you a 90-day money back guarantee. Try it for 90 days. If you don't like it, give him back. Would you come tonight? Bless your heart. Bless you, honey.
Hallelujah. Bless you.
Bless you, Lord.
Bless you, baby.
Bless you, Lord.
Hallelujah. Bless you. Glory to God.
We'll tell you
Glory
God's
to
so good.
God. Jesus, our Heavenly Father. Lord, you
Would you
know
come
her
tonight?
heart.
Would you come?
God, you know her needs.
Would you let God make
Heavenly
a change in
Father,
your
you
life?
know her heart and how she
Let me
feels.
pray with you. Let me come back.
God, as she
Try it.
spiritually get more.
Try it. I promise you, you'll sleep better than you've ever slept tonight. Your pillow will be more comfortable than it's ever felt. Your covers will be as longer than they've ever been. You'll sleep like a newborn baby.
God, give her
Try.
a blessing she needs.
Would you try?
Give her the strength.
I'll
Give her
come
the
to you.
forgiveness, Lord.
I'll come to you and we'll make it right there. Would you come?
God, give her
Would you want me to come?
of faith, Lord, to look up
Say
and say, praise
just yes.
God, I want it to Jesus. And He
you allow
done
me to
it
come?
for me. Marley, let your faith touch it. Glory to God.
See one night, see another night.
Hallelujah.
God is still on the throne. God is good.
Hallelujah.
Friend, I can't promise you tomorrow will ever come. Garth Brooks sings a song, how I love country music. Always did. Grew up singing it, playing it.
Praise the Lord.
Sings a song if tomorrow never comes.
Hallelujah.
There'll come a time in your life when you wish you had one more tomorrow.
Amen. Yes.
That time will be. The Bible says as that tree falls,
Glory to God. Hallelujah.
so shall it lie. That's how it's going to raise back.
That's right.
If it lays down, if it lays down a wild olive, that's another sermon too. It will raise up a wild olive. If it lays down a sinner, it'll raise up a sinner.
Amen.
Would you come? One more altar. Can I come with you? Would you let me come? I'm not going to force myself on nobody. My, what a wonderful time it'd be if you would lay down tonight and know that another one died out to sin and gave you his life. Every head bowed and nobody looking. It's 9:30. I'm not going to keep me. I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to say my prayers before I lay my head down. Is there one tonight that cares enough about their life that they would say, God, raise up a hand and pray for me, preacher? Bless that hand. Is there another? Is there another? Preacher, I'm not exactly where I need to be. I used to be in church. I go to church from time to time, but I've got things in my life that I'm putting before God, and I'd like to see that change. Would you raise your hand if you have that going on in your life? You'd like for us to pray for you tonight. All right, Brother Leslie. Bless you. Martin, you have now closed. I love you. You know,
Before we close, Brother Travis preached on the Samaritan lady and how she was an outcast. Sister Vicki, I thought of that as Brother Travis preaching, how she would come to that well every day at noon, and how she would come with her head hung low. And I thought about she may even have her head so low, Brother Travis, that it was in her water bucket that she was so ashamed to even come out and draw that water. But after Jesus talked to her there at the well,
never ceases to
Brother James, Brother Travis told us that she went and told all these men, come and see one that told all about me. She was no more ashamed. She was no more with her head low. She went out to that sea.
Bless the Lord.
With her head held high. Even though they might have said, look at this prostitute. What is she doing down here? Maybe it might be you later. Maybe it was me that somebody said, wasn't he once just a drunk? But listen here, after Jesus touches you, you might have come here tonight with your head hung low. But you can leave here tonight with your head held high.
Hallelujah.
Talk to you and touch you and change your life and make you a new creature. As Brother Travis mentioned, I believe it's Brother Travis, or maybe one of the other brothers, you can leave here being an heir and a joint heir unto Jesus Christ. No longer of us.
Hallelujah.
We're just in this world as the brother's fold. You could be as the Samaritan woman. You could be changed here this evening.
Bless your heart, Brother Ernie. Yeah, Dakota.
That just made me think of a simple Bible verse that I want to Probably one of our first ones. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him
Glory to God.
perish but have everlasting life. He didn't say just Brother Lesson, or he didn't say just a code. He said all.
Whosoever will. Whosoever will.
To die for the world.
That's good, honey.
Not just one person, but that everyone will have the chance to enter into the kingdom.
Hallelujah. Love you, Dakota. Thank God for your little love that you have for God and your faithfulness to always witness for Him. It's been good service. Amen. Been a good meeting. God is here with us. We brought the revival another night forward. We felt like that there was a reason. And there was, Brother Trav.
There was.
I remember when Marley, I told her always that if God ever speaks to you and you want to give your heart to the Lord, just let Papa know. And one night up Genoa there, Brother Travis. Yeah. She come up and she tapped old Papa on the back, and it was time.
Amen.
Marley, I love you, baby. And she's grown up on me since then. But it's really, really lifts my heart up here tonight, Mama, to know that our baby still trusts in God and comes to Him when she has a need. There's some of you here, I wish that I could say the right word that would cause you to make the step, but I'll never know that word. All I can tell you is that I love you. And my heart is heavy for you. I'm carrying a burden for some of your souls, and some of you have come here with other needs other than salvation. God can supply every need.
Amen. Yes.
But the greatest need we have is to put our faith in Him. And it's not a great, big, complicated thing. You've got to accept the Word of God and believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that He died, that He shed His blood for your sins, and that He rose from the grave. There have been a lot of gods in this world that have been confessed, and maybe people have been loyal to. There have been a lot of people that they thought was gods that died, and that's what they did. They died. But Jesus didn't lay in the grave. He arose. He is the only one that ever did. And bless your heart, you need to put your faith in Him. Get on God's side. Is it the mind of the church? Let me just see, some of you would like to see the revival go on that needs the Lord in your life? Would you like for us to go another night? Would you be here if we did? With every head bowed and every eye closed, is there a hand of an unsaved or a hand of a burdened soul that will lift it and say, I'd like to see it go on another night, and I'll be here? Because we want to carry this service as far as it should go. But we don't want to close anybody out. Anybody? Brother Trav, you have any feelings?
If there's loss that shows interest, like you said, I would have no problem preaching again tomorrow night. But again, I think there's a time to start one and there's a time to...
I do too.
That's up to the lost.
Is there one? You want it to go on. You'll be here because we don't want to close this thing out on you. We want you to be saved. And if we do close this revival, we still want you to be saved.
And if we close it and you come back and you say you'd like me to come back and preach for you, I'll come back and preach for you.
Brother Travis, we want you to come back anytime you can. Corey, even though I call you Troy sometimes. I don't think I've ever called him Corey. He's always been a Troy to me all the time I've ever known him. She'll tell you that every time I talk about you. You're Troy. But we thank God. Brother Zach, we want you to preach for us sometime. Church, are you lifted up? Has this been good for you? Bless your heart. To you, every one of you that have been lifted up, we want to thank God for that. And for you that have been here and have felt God's persuasion upon your heart, we're not going to quit praying for you. And Brother Trav, I'd like for you to come right down here. And I know we're social distancing, but I've never heard anybody preach the Word of God any clearer than what God has blessed you to bring forth this week. We've heard the Word.
I do want to say one thing. I thank you for allowing me to come and have. I have liberty here. I preach like this everywhere I go, and I feel liberty. I feel as free here as I do at my own church.
Hallelujah. Thank God for that.
Just thankful that you invited.
I want you to come up and give Brother Travis your hand of love and tell him how much you appreciate it. Come on around. Come on around. What did you say?
I said not Troy.
Yeah. Brother Troy, give Brother Troy here a hand. Hallelujah. Take a moment to come by. Bless the Lord. Brother Roy, been a good time. Hallelujah. For all of you that have come and supported the revival, we can't tell you how much we love you. Hallelujah. Bless the Lord. Brother James, if you would, ask God's... here, let me have this brother right here. Tell him to holler at me there a minute. I want to ask you to ask God's blessings upon our people.
Oh, absolutely.
We love our brother here.
Let us bow our heads, please. Dear God, once again, we come with a thankful heart. We thank you for listening to your word. You opened up our heart and our minds, and especially for these two that have came forward and Lord, and turned their life over to you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for all that you have done. Now, Lord, go with each one. Bless each home that is represented here. As we leave this place, help us to leave here with a greater determination to take what we have learned here this night into the world out here. Thank you, Lord, and it's in your name I pray and ask. Amen.
Hallelujah. God bless you. Come back.
You all have services here on Thursday night, right?
Every Thursday. Yeah.